Hi, I'm back and I'm going to talk to you about the planets. I know you've done a lot of work on the planets, but I want to make sure that we are all on the same page. All right, so here's a picture of the solar system. You have the sun on the left-hand side here. Don't forget the saying, "My very eager mother just served us nachos," to help you remember the 8 planets. The inner planets, starting closest from the sun, are Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars. Then in between the inner and outer planets, you have the asteroid belt. It's like a whole bunch of asteroids that are just orbiting the sun in this position here between Mars and Jupiter. The outer planets are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. You see Pluto right here. It's been classified now as a dwarf planet, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. This is an interesting graphic because it shows you the relative masses of all of the planets in our solar system. And you can see by far the largest mass is Jupiter. Jupiter is our largest planet and it has the most moons. Second is Saturn, and then the other planets are taking up the rest of the mass, but the inner planets do not take up very much mass when they're compared to the outer planets. Again, the inner planets are Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, all pictured here. They all have rocky crust, dense mantles, and core layers. They're sometimes called terrestrial planets, meaning that they are Earth-like. They have a really high density. Mercury and Venus don't even have moons. Earth has 1 moon. Mars has 2 moons. Then you have the asteroid belt, this belt of asteroids that's in between Mars and Jupiter. So Mercury's rotation time is very slow. Revolution time is 88 days. It's a cold planet, low gravity, thin to no atmosphere. It's heavily cratered. Venus is the hottest planet. It can get extremely hot on the surface of Venus due to its really dense atmosphere. You would think Mercury would be the hottest because it's closer to the sun, but because it doesn't have a very dense atmosphere, Venus actually beats it out as the hottest planet. Its gravity is similar to Earth and its diameter is similar to Earth, but it is not habitable for humans. Then Earth is the third planet. We're going to skip over that though and talk about Mars. Mars is the 4th planet from the sun. It has a longer revolution time than us. Remember, orbital time or revolution time goes in order. So the one closest to the sun, Mercury, has the shortest revolution time. Neptune, the furthest out planet, has the longest revolution time. Mars is the planet that Elon Musk is trying to colonize. So we're thinking possibly humans could live on Mars, but it does have a very thin atmosphere. It's carbon dioxide, so we wouldn't be able to just stand on Mars and breathe. The next planet out would be Jupiter. But all of these Jovian planets, all of these outer planets are large. They're gigantic. They have a gaseous surface layer, so we couldn't just stand on them. They're composed of light elements, so they have like a lower density than we do here on Earth. They're composed mainly of hydrogen and helium, just like our sun is, and most stars. They all have ring systems, not just Saturn. Jupiter is the 5th planet from the sun. It has a really short rotation time, less than 10 hours, but it takes 11.9 years for it to orbit or revolve around the sun. Like I said before, it's the largest planet, has the strongest magnetic field, and it actually radiates out 2 times more the amount of heat that it receives from the sun. And this is the planet with that great red spot on it. It's like a gigantic hurricane that's been raging for like 200 or 300 years. Saturn is the next planet out. It has about a 10-hour rotation time compared to Earth's 24-hour rotation time, but it takes nearly 30 years for it to orbit the sun. Saturn has the lowest density of all of the planets. If there were an ocean large enough or a lake large enough, Saturn would float on it because its density is less than water. It also has a very strong magnetic field. Saturn is famous for the rings. They're the most visible rings, but all 4 planets in the outer planets actually have rings. Uranus is the 7th planet from the sun. It has a 17.2 2-hour rotation time, but it has an 84-year orbital time. The average temperature on Uranus is very cold at a negative 200 degrees Celsius. It was actually hit by a large object early on in its history, and so its axis is tipped almost 90 degrees. So like even more than ours. Ours is tipped 23.5. So you can see that here, it's like tipped on its side. It's blue in color, that's due to the methane in its atmosphere. Neptune is the last planet out, or the 8th planet from the sun, and it has a 16.1 hour rotation time. It takes 165 years for it to orbit the sun. So that 165-year orbit is compared to our Earth's 1-year orbit. This planet Neptune was actually discovered in 1864 after astronomers predicted its existence mathematically. So they predicted it was going to be there before they could even see it with any of the telescopes. It has wind gusts at over 2,000 kilometers per hour. Also a very, very cold planet at minus 225 degrees Celsius. Its atmosphere is mainly hydrogen with some helium, and the 1% methane is what gives it its blue color.
Hey, what's he doing? Jamal, what are you doing?
So this picture is showing you some of the moons of the planets in the solar system. So Earth has 1 moon, Mars has 2 moons. Remember, Mercury and Venus have 0 moons. Then we have the asteroid belt. And then Jupiter has the most moons. These are the 4 main moons here: Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. Saturn has a bunch of moons, Uranus has a bunch of moons, Neptune has a bunch of moons, and Pluto, even though it's not considered a planet anymore, does have its own moon. This is Earth's size compared to the moons of Jupiter and the other moons, just for comparison. So again, in the inner planets, only Earth and Mars have moons. The other 2 planets, Mercury and Venus, don't have any moons at all. Jupiter actually has 79 moons. This number has been updated, but the 4 largest are pictured here. I'm not going to go through each of these slide by slide with you, so I'm going to skip through. Saturn also has a lot of moons, Titan being one of the main ones. Uranus has about 27 known moons, and Neptune has about 13 moons. So comets are commonly known as dirty snowballs because they're made of frozen, icy material with dust particles trapped in that mixture. They spend most of their time really far out past Neptune's orbit in what's called the Kuiper belt and the Oort cloud. Comets, when they approach the sun, they form what's called a coma. That's often referred to as the tail. The tail is weird because it always points away from the sun. Halley's Comet is one of the most famous comets. It has an orbital period of 76 years. So this is the sun way here in the center of all those planets. And it takes 76 years for Halley's Comet to make its way from way out past Neptune's orbit back in. It goes around the sun and then it comes back out. Asteroids are very different from comets because they are solid and they are rock-like masses. They're really huge. There's thousands of them in the solar system. They're material that's left over from the solar system's formation. And remember, there's that asteroid belt that's orbiting around the sun between Mars and Jupiter, between the inner planets and the outer planets. They can collide with Earth, but there's no current risk of any of them colliding with Earth. But remember, 65 million years ago, the current theory is that the extinction of the dinosaurs was caused by a huge asteroid hitting Earth. Some people are doing research into preventing collision of an asteroid with Earth. Meteoroids are like asteroids. They are rocks in space. The main difference between meteoroids and asteroids are their size. They're smaller. Meteoroids are much smaller. Then there's this terminology that you have to get used to. Meteoroids are rocks traveling in space. A meteor is a shooting star. That light is created when the meteoroid passed through our atmosphere, and the friction causes that fiery look like a tail of the shooting star. And then a meteorite is a rock in when the meteor actually survives making it through our atmosphere and hits Earth. A meteor shower is when there's a large number of meteors that are streaking across our night sky just within a few hours, and it occurs when Earth passes through a debris field that's left behind by a comet. And here's a picture. So this is an illustration. This isn't a photo, but this is an illustration of a meteor shower. So you have a whole bunch of meteors streaking through our sky at one time. All right, that's it for planets. I'll see you guys in a little bit.